It's a Final Word Cricket Podcast. Adam Collins, Bharat Sundaresan. We're here at a rainy Old Trafford. That's a line we've heard many times over the years. We're here for Westfield, London, Westfield, Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. We've had the week and a half of hype waiting for this fourth Test match. Perfectly set up with Australia 2-1 ahead after England romped home. I say romped home. They won by 3 wickets, but it felt like an important momentum-shifting victory a week and a half ago up at Headingley, another famous Ashes venue here. Baz, you've been in the nets. What have you learnt this afternoon? It feels like we're getting closer to knowing that Aussie 11.
Yeah, I mean, it became pretty obvious that Cam Green is playing. Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne obviously were already out there. As soon as you'd learned that the rain was not going to relent and the outdoor nets were out of use, you knew the indoor nets was where he had to go. And as I walked out of the lift, so did Steve Smith, and so we walked into the nets together pretty much. So he started off, and then Marnus came in there. Marnus actually copped a blow to the head, but he's fine. I think his helmet was worse for wear, and the helmet went away. And then
how did he cop the whack? Was it through the wanger?
Oh, through the wanger. His new one-on-one batting coach, Andy Flower, who's now an integral part of this supposed stuff. He was a consultant, you'll remember, for the WTC final at the Oval, then came back in Headingley, and now he started giving throwdowns as well, which, if you're part of the Australian support stuff, at some point you have to start giving throwdowns, right?
Especially to Marnus. Yeah.
Especially to Marnus. No, but they were working on some technical aspects of his batting one-on-one. So it was pretty early on in his batting stint today. Got hit, and like I said, he tried fixing the helmet, was no good, and then the new helmet came out. Maybe there was a little bit of a concussion test because there's a doctor who brought the helmet out, but what we do know is he's fine, and he spent a lot of time batting after that, like he always does. David Warner had a long hit, and he was smashing it. I just have a feeling he's going to come out playing really aggressively, and I'm going to predict a big score for him here.
Did you see the Instagram post from David Warner yesterday? I mean, it was kind of hinting towards people about you have to sort of, I'm paraphrasing here, rationalise the amount of people you're paying attention to and focus on those who love you most. And as if to say, if the Aussie public are writing him off, he'll turn inward and find inspiration that way.
I've been a little surprised with the criticism that's come his way. He's played 2 very big hands in Australia, getting that 2-0 lead. The 60 he made at Lords in difficult conditions, and his contributions at Edgbaston as well. In the run chase, yes, I mean, Usman Khawaja is the one who batted for a long time, but Warner's innings was crucial in the bigger picture, and he batted well at the Oval as well. So, just because he got out to Stuart Broad again, people wrote him off. Either was a little uncalled for. And
maybe it's to do with the fact that we've had such a long break. Had it been a turnaround of 3 days like it was between Lords and Leeds, there wouldn't have been time for the fervent speculation. But the added complication being that there is 7 trying to fit into 6, or maybe 8 trying to fit into 7, depending on how you interpret it. But and in keeping with that point, the very fact that Cameron Green looks like he's going to force his way in at the expense of a bowler, which wasn't what we would have been talking about when we left Leeds.
Yeah, which is what I was coming to. Yeah, Cam Green was the third guy to walk into the net, and which made it pretty obvious that he's playing. Pat Cummins didn't mention it in the press conference, but he hinted at it. He spoke about how they're going to stick to the same top 5, and he did say that it would come down to Murphy or Cam Green. And from what I watched yesterday as well, just the fact that Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne, as soon as they finished batting, they were into the net bowling, and Head was bowling his off breaks to not the bowlers, like we've seen happen quite often, right? At the end of a session, he just rolled his arm over. He was bowling to the likes of Warner and Mitchell Marsh, so which was a sign. And then Marnus was bowling his leg spin, and I asked Pat Cummins about it, and he said he prefers him bowling his leg spin rather than the off spin or the wonderful medium pace that he really backs himself to bowl. That was a giveaway for me. And also the way Murphy bowled yesterday, he bowled very early on in the session, and he was bowling only to Marnus Labuschagne, and it felt like it was even at that point more about what Marnus wanted him to bowl rather than what Murphy was doing. That was another telltale sign. And Cam Green just batted like someone who's preparing for a test match, not like someone who's just feeling his way back from an injury break. So even before we got to the indoor nets today, in the outdoor nets, I was pretty convinced that it was Cam Green playing, which is a big call to make. But in a way, in a series like this, it makes sense, because if Nathan Lyon was here, there's no question, right? You don't even talk about leaving out a spinner. And this has nothing, I think, to do with how good Todd Murphy is or he isn't, or even Pat Cummins' confidence in him. Because these innings don't last for more than 60 overs, like we saw in Headingley. Pat Cummins just feels he's more comfortable with an all-seam attack rather than have to worry about where he can fit Todd Murphy in. And Cam Green and Mitchell Marsh provide two very different options for him. One tall seamer can hit the pitch, can swing the ball around. Mitchell Marsh, we saw what he could do last week. He swings the ball if there's any conditions in his favor. So it makes sense to me. It still feels like a well-rounded attack despite there being no spinner. And it doesn't mean that there's no spinner. Travis Head bowled pretty well when he got the chance in Lords, didn't he?
Well, he was used as when he first came into the one-day team, he was the primary part-timer. He overtook Glenn Maxwell. It's a long time ago now, but there's a lot of faith shown in him by Steve Smith when he was leading the one-day team around 16, 17 or thereabouts. And you mentioned Marnus Labuschagne in passing there. Let's not forget the decisive wicket he took here at Old Trafford 4 years ago to get Jack Leach, who was proving an impediment as he did at Leeds. So Labuschagne will back himself. Typically, you play a spinner here at Old Trafford due to the vast expanses. It is a bigger ground by English standards, but it hasn't been as good for spin as it reputationally was before the pitch getting spun around in 2009 to 2011. When it did renovations here, it used to be the Stratford end, but that's now gone, and that means that you do enjoy, historically, in the last decade, more wickets through seam. And one of the seamers that's going to get a chance here for England is going to be the hometown boy, not quite hometown, he's from Burnley, but the Lancashire lad, James Anderson. Probably hasn't been called a lad in a while, 40 years of age, turns 41 at the end of the month, at the end of the series. But bowling from that James Anderson end, he's never taken a 5-wicket bag at Manchester, would you believe? However, he takes his test wickets here at 22, which is a reminder of the ongoing threat that he presents. Alongside Stuart Broad, who's picked up a couple of six-fers here, and he feels like the guy who's undroppable in the England bowling lineup right now, although he has bowled 159 overs so far this summer, Broad. So it might be that if we didn't have a structured break with 9 or 10 days off, that he might have missed the 4th test on the bounce. But we saw how effective Broad was to Warner here the last time around. We saw how effective Steve Smith was in swirling conditions here 4 years ago too.
Yeah, and Stuart Broad has been a sensation throughout this series. The fact that he's upskilled, like Damien Fleming spoke a lot about his bowling on ACN with us, and just the skills he seems to have, not just like brought into his game. He always had the outswinger, but he talked it up beautifully in the lead up to the Ashes, and he's become as dangerous a bowler to right-handers as he always has been to the left-handers, and not just David Warner, a lot of left-handers around the world. And he just seems to have found that extra spring in his stride. We saw the impact that you could have on Stuart Broad if he's left out of the first test. We saw it in the last Ashes in Australia. I'm not saying he could have had the same impact, but you could see a little extra desperation in him, almost like he was trying to prove a point every time he had a ball in his hand. Here, being picked for the first test, I think just calm Stuart Broad down, if that is even possible. And he's looked a threat pretty much every time he's run in with the ball in hand. And he's made some very important breakthroughs, and he's set moments up for England. They haven't always seized it, but he did that last week again in Headingley. And like Usman Khawaja said while speaking to the Australian media a couple of days ago, Adam, that even though Jimmy Anderson is the legend, it's Brody that they kind of fear, because he just has those spells where he changes the game, and he's done it so many times in the Ashes before.
Yeah, and look, it feels like this time around compared to Australia in 21-22, they've got their selections almost always right, or at least close to right. You can see where they're getting at, which makes the Moeen Ali call at number 3 all the more fascinating. I mean, if that comes off, Moeen said at his press conference, I think it was yesterday, that if he comes off 1 time out of 4, it justifies the selection. And look, maybe he's right, but it does provide them that extra length in the batting lineup. It does give them the flexibility of Wokes batting at 8, and indeed Mark Wood batting at 9. We saw what a game changer he was, swinging from the hip last week. Harry Brook at 5, where he wants to be. His best test innings yet at Leeds, match winning there. Bairstow shuffles back to 7 after being carted at 5 in the 3rd test match. So across the board, because Moeen goes up to where he was in the chase at Leeds, they do look better across the board, even if it feels like Moeen on paper is too high.
And you don't lose the configuration that you're most comfortable with. That's exactly why they had Moeen Ali at number 3, and it worked out. They like having Bairstow at 7. And Brook likes being at number 5. And after the way Brook batted in the last week, you now know, and the way out of place he looked at number 3 in the first innings. You don't want to move Brook anywhere. You just keep him at 5. And that's the beauty of having someone like Moeen Ali, right? Yes, I mean, he's a team player. He always puts his hand up. But also, very few cricketers in the history of the game have the kind of experience he has batting up and down the order. And not just at different stages of his career. It's not that he was an opener and a top order batter at the start and then lost his way, or the other way around. Throughout his career, he's been pushed up and down the order. So he's used used to facing the new ball. He's used to facing the second new ball. He knows they'll go short at him. And in a strange way, because he's number 3, you'd expect Australia to not go short at him because, England do get opening partnerships out of Duckett and Crawley, but not very often. So Moeen Ali's going to walk out facing the new ball, and when the ball's in his half, he's a very dangerous player. He can take the game away from you. He's got some beautiful shots through the offside, and that could work in his favour rather than him batting at number 7 or 8 when he's going to be bumped out.
You've seen a bit of the pitch the last 2 days, although it's been under covers all day today. It's been a sodden day here in Manchester, all the training indoors. But from the pictures we saw yesterday, it felt like they could have played on it 2 days out, kind of similar to Birmingham at the start of the series. So I doubt it'll have, just on face value, quite as much life as Leeds did, although it's always reckless to judge a pitch from photos 2 days out, as we're always saying on social media. But yeah, it's a grand old ground here, Manchester. I've made the case with Jeff before in one of our live shows a few years ago that this is the best Ashes ground. There's been so many great Ashes moments here, going all the way back to the late 19th century through to the thriller here in 1902, Frank Laver in 1909, through to Jim Laker's 19 for 90, Richie Benaud around the wicket in 1961, Botham here in 1981. You want to jump fast forward to 2019 where Australia were able to retain the urn having been beaten at Leeds. But it all means that England have only won here against Australia in 81, not since, but they have won 11 of their last 13 test matches here. The only one they've dropped since the 2005 Ashes draw was against Australia 4 years ago. So they enjoy playing up north.
They do. Ben Stokes was asked about the 42-year drought between England last winning an Ashes test, and he said, I'm just 32 years old. So, I don't think they're reading too much into it. You can't. There were different teams during that period. It's not the same team. But you mentioned Jim Laker, and I have to say this. After the Leeds test, I was really excited about going and seeing Jim Laker close, which was very close to where I was staying in Shipley. And it turns out it's just a bunch of apartments.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was a little disappointed, but it kind of made sense. You spoke about the 19 wickets he took here against Australia, and you look at his celebration after each wicket. What did he do? He just stuck the shirt inside his pant. There was not even a little applause for himself. That's Jim Laker close is pretty much Jim Laker in a nutshell. I thought a bunch of very modest-looking apartments. I don't know how much they cost, but it's been a ground with so much history, so much Ashes history, and Pat Cummins said that he doesn't have a great memory of remembering test matches as a whole, but he does remember the moment where they all stood out there looking at. There was a big screen there.
Yeah,
it is still there.
They're now building an extra hotel on that side of the ground.
There you go. Of course, yeah. It's a stadium which always seems to be in construction.
Yeah.
That stand that they have, makeshift stand, it looks
permanent stand.
It is one of the scariest structures you'll ever see in cricket.
It's got 7,000 people in there. It takes the capacity from 19,000 to 26,000, and it is always up during cricket season. They can host all the big concert here and so on. And Ben Stokes enjoys it here. I should say that he made a century here in 2020 in one of the behind closed doors test matches against the Windies. He made a match-winning 100 with Ben Folkes actually here against South Africa last year when England were in a smidgen of trouble with the bat on day 2 and day 3. So he's got form on this ground. So it's all perfectly positioned as we make our way towards day 1 tomorrow. Before we go, the Final Word Hall of Fame. Final Word Hall of Fame for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. Baz, the one thing we missed when talking about team changes was the unlikely bulky hero from the 2008 Grand Final. He's had the best 5 minutes of his footy life, and that includes the 04 Grand Final, Stuart Dew, who was the match winner for Hawthorn in the third term of that famous Grand Final. He's with the Australian squad. What doing? I've just got here. What's Stuart Dew doing here? He was coaching 2 weeks ago.
I'm pretty sure he just walked past us, didn't he? Yeah, he did. And
Franklin to Dew, he might kick this, and he has. Sorry, keep going. No,
it's part of my footy education. So I've watched a lot of Stuart Dew on TV as the Gold Coast Suns coach, if I can talk about it. But what a change in atmosphere and environment for him. He was an AFL coach till last week, and then it happens. He's let go of, and here he is in an Australian training camp. What I learned was he was just on holiday, and he wanted. It was on his bucket list to be at 2 Ashes venues. He's friends with a lot of South Australians, as you know. He's a mighty South Aussie. So maybe it happened through Travis Head, but he was told, hey, if you're around, just come and join us. And
we had Joel Selwood doing a similar thing before was it Lord's Test? Or
I think before Lord's we had Oscar Piastri, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but Joel Selwood was around, maybe before Leeds or before Lord's. Yeah, I think both of them. You're right. He was around with Piastri, or maybe the day before him. But yesterday I saw Stuart Dew just kind of getting a feel of things. You could see a lot of the footy fans in the Australian team were kind of tending towards him, having a little chat with him. I posted a picture of or a video of Steve Smith and Marnus having their cricketing romance in the middle. But what a lot of people were focusing on was what was happening in the background, which is Stuart Dew holding court. And yesterday I thought he wasn't so involved. He was like balancing a ball on his bat, and later in the day he went and checked the pitch out with Tony Doddomate.
Really?
Yeah, the chief selector, or one of the selectors with the Australian team. But today I saw just before, or while Pat Cummins was walking out to have a hit in the nets, Travis Head was there as well, and there was a proper conversation, or it was more Stuart Dew speaking to Pat Cummins. Maybe it's one of those leadership exchange programs, right, like from footy to cricket. But what a beautiful crossover, and another crossover Hall of Fame mention, and I never heard it before 2 days ago. Andrew McDonald wanging balls at Marnus Labuschagne. Steve Smith calls him Barassi. I was like, whoa, that's niche. That's niche.
Well,
Steve.
I wouldn't call it niche as much as it's a very big call to compare anyone to the great Ron Barassi. Bharat, that's the final word Hall of Fame for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. We'll be talking a lot more about them through the course of the Test match. We should end it here, though. This has been our preview episode of the Final Word Daily. If you like what we do, patreon.com/the Final Word. Our live show with Stephen Finn the night before the Oval Test match. So we'll record a preview at the Oval, then we'll be down to the Phoenix in Soho with Finney. He's a great guest. Tickets have almost sold out, I'm told, by the venue, so get in quick. The link's in the show notes. Buy a ticket, buy your mate a ticket. If you're a patron, get one for half price. All right, goodbye till tomorrow. Cannot wait. Ta-da.